Good afternoon, everyone. Samalit Hogan with the Western Mass Men's Business Collaborative, also the Regional Director for the Massachusetts Small Business Development Center Network. I want to welcome you to today's webinar. We're going to be hearing a presentation today from Alison Ebner, and her colleague here, Darlene Morse, is with us as well. They're both from the Employers Association of the Northeast. And I'm also really glad to welcome all of you to today's webinar, which is being co-hosted by all of the organizations here in the Valley who are involved with the Western Mass Means Business Collaborative, including SCORE, the Center for Women Enterprise, Valley Community Development, Common Capital, Franklin County CDC, and of course the Massachusetts Small Business Development Center here in the Springfield office that's hosted by UMass Amherst, as well as the Salem State and Clark University offices. And of course, we got to thank all of our stakeholders and the folks, the organizations who are funding this program, including Mass Growth Capital Corporation, which funds some of the organizations that are involved here in the collaborative, and more importantly, to the Small Business Administration and the state of Massachusetts. So welcome everyone. For today's webinar, we're going to do a presentation. We're going to ask you to please use the Q&A button that you see on your screen to please type your questions. And at the appropriate time, we'll also open up for Q&A. And at that time, you might be able to unmute yourself and ask your questions live. And I also want to please ask you that you look at your name. One of the first, just a little bit housekeeping here. Look at the name on the Zoom screen as a participant. Make sure your first and last name are showing up. If that's not what's showing up, please rename yourself. These are the steps to go ahead and please rename yourself. This makes it easier for us to count the people who are here and also for the attendance, so we can see who registered and who came to the webinar, and give you credit for being here today. It makes it easier for us to, when we call out someone, rather than say, iPhone 6, can you please unmute yourself? It's much easier if we see your first and last name. So I'll give you a second to look through that. Also, while we're just getting started, make sure you have everything you need for today's webinar: pen and paper, something to drink. We're going to be going for about an hour and a half with no break. So keep that in mind. And also, please keep yourself muted until there's time for Q&A. Lastly, I want to ask you all to please fill out the feedback form. You're going to get a feedback form emailed to you directly from Eventbrite as you register to there. And we really greatly appreciate your responses to that. I swear it's like 3 or 4 questions. It's very short. So it's not going to take you much time at all to fill it out, and we greatly appreciate it. All right, last but not least, I also want to share with you another, I'm going to sort of quickly change here my PowerPoint presentation. Today is part of a series of webinars that we're hosting this month and next month. So I'm going to go ahead and share that with you in just a moment. I'm just trying to switch screens real quick here. All right, here we go. So this is part of Fundamentals of Running a Successful Business. We've already had 3 webinars on this series. Last week, we had legal considerations for businesses, and the week prior to that, we had basics for business insurance, as well as the basics of turning your hobby into business. Today, we're talking about finding and retaining talented employees. It's part 1 of this 2-part webinar, because there's so much to cover. It's just absolutely impossible to do it in an hour and a half one time. So next week, we're going to have Allison come back. And for some reason, I don't have that sliding here. I think, wait a minute, something happening here. Oh, here it is. April 27th, 12:30. So next week, we're going to be back at 12:30, and we're going to have the part 2 and focus more on employee loss, all businesses must know. And the following week will be managing business financials and bookkeeping. And the last webinar of our series is conflict resolution in the workplace, especially now that we're dealing with so many remote workers. How do you deal with that? So I highly encourage you all to find this listing right on Eventbrite. It's free to register. And we appreciate you taking advantage of those webinars and giving us your feedback. So without further delay, Allison, welcome. Allison and Darlene, welcome. Whichever one of you wants to start first, go ahead.
Thanks so much, Somali. We really appreciate being here today. And as she said, I'm Allison Ebner with Employers Association. My colleague Darlene Morris is here today as well. She's definitely going to be letting me know how things are going here in the chat. And she's also going to be uploading some things, documents and forms that might be of interest to you as we're talking about the agenda. We've got a really, really big agenda. So let me work to share my screen here. Let's see. Here we go. Slideshow from beginning. And are you all seeing that? Can you guys see that? Thumbs up. Awesome. Okay. So we all know why we're here. So we'll keep going. And you all know who I am at this point. If you don't know the Employers Association, we're a membership-based organization that provides support to over 1,000 member companies on their people process. So you can certainly find out more about us on our website, but we will keep going and get going because we've got a really hefty agenda, everybody, to get through. And I have some hopefully really good information to share with you about recruiting and retaining employees. So let's start by kind of a quick review of what we're going to talk about today. And that's, are you ready for new employees? Before we can step forward and hire, we kind of have to take stock of a few things. And we're going to talk about that a little bit too. And also talk about the state of the job market today and just kind of the general climate and the general business atmosphere. That's really important to set the stage for the continuing discussion about things like the art and science of writing a compelling job description and your recruiting ad. Those are very different, by the way, and we're going to talk about those things. We're also going to talk about hiring options. Most companies, go internal and work on it themselves. There are some, really compelling reasons to look outside for help. We're going to talk about those as well. Best practices for interviews. The interviews are usually the make or break for a candidate and for you as well, coming on board in your organization. So we'll talk about some tips and best practices. Before the job offer, what to do and what not to do. We'll cover that. Onboarding new employees during the global pandemic. That is a huge challenge. Some organizations that always operated remotely, they're pretty good at doing this. So those of us that have been kind of thrust into this, thanks to COVID, are learning from those companies and how they do things and how they're doing it well. So we'll talk about that. And as a tie-in, there's some things on performance management that we need to talk about as well that directly relate to these topics. And also we're going to talk a little bit about employee engagement because that's an important component of this too. So off we go. Here we go. So we're going to start by, what we said, taking a state of the state, and we have to keep it real. SHRM is the Society for Human Resource Management. It's sort of the mothership of all things HR at an international level, if you're unfamiliar with them. They did a very recent survey last month, and the survey showed some very disturbing trends and predictions. And I've got a few of those here that I wanna chat with you about. More than half of all employees in the US will be looking for a job in 2021. Now this is SHRM, they're researchers interviewing thousands of employees, and half of those employees, more than 50%, saying, I'm going to be looking for a new job. So you're looking to hire, right? So this is good news, bad news for us as employers. Yay, half the employees are going to be looking for a job, right? I might have a new pool of candidates to pull from if they're unhappy. On the flip side, we've got to say, well, does that represent half of my employees, right? We are employers currently. So it's a mixed message there with that particular statistics. 46% of employees feel less connected to their employer now than before the pandemic. And this is a result of wear and tear over time, over the last year, typically. We did surveys on engagement and connection between employers and employees in the several months after COVID first kicked off. And the engagement numbers and the satisfaction numbers were much, much higher. And they attribute that to the fact that employees really were looking to their employer as their first trusted best resource for information on things that were happening with regard to the virus, or with regard to safety, with regard to additional benefits, everything. So now that we've kind of had some time pass between that March, April, May timeframe and this particular evaluation and survey they did in March, just a month ago, they're seeing that that connection is a little frayed. And also a majority or a good percentage of employees are saying that company culture has diminished since the start of the pandemic. This could be for a lot of reasons. We have hybrid workforces, folks that were normally all together in a workplace, maybe some are hybrid, and not looking at bringing them back anytime soon necessarily. So things get frayed when that happens as well. And only 21% say that they're engaged at work. Pre-pandemic, it was in the 30s. So we have some things we have to consider and keep in mind as we talk about things here. So before we launch into the really detailed information on recruiting and retention, we want to talk about employee engagement, because once you bring them on board, this is really, really critical. You need to get them, into your culture. You want to immerse them in your organization. And engagement really is the secret sauce for success. The more engaged that they are, the more that they're getting out of the organization and investing into the organization, that translates to more profitability for your organization. Now, there's a lot of hash marks in between engagement and profitability and how we get there. But ultimately, one end of the spectrum is engagement. The other end is a successful outcome for your organization. So we want to talk about that. And engagement is really defined. It's the concept that helps understand and describe, quantitatively and qualitatively, the nature of the relationship between the organization and their employees. And a lot of it has to do with trust. And we'll be talking about that in a little bit more detail throughout this program. So what do we mean when we say employee engagement? It's how they feel about your organization. It's how they feel you treat them, their personal well-being. It's how they feel about going to work. Do I have friends at work? Are people nice to me? Do they ask my opinion on things? Do I get a connection socially in my organization when I go to work? Do I generally wake up happy to go to work? Do they feel an emotional affinity to going to work? Is there a supportive culture here? If I need some help, if I'm not understanding how to do a job correctly, can I go to my supervisor or the owner, typically in a small business, and say, hey, I'm not sure I understand how we do this or why we do this? Is that kind of question met with acceptance and a safe place to be able to ask those questions, or is it met with some resistance and even some hostility in some cases, which we don't want? And I think we see things, like employee loyalty and employer loyalty. How are our benefits set up? How is our compensation set up? All of these things are interconnected to measure the engagement of your employees. And a lot has to do with your managers and how things get disseminated from them, how they treat the employees, and how those relationships interconnect. And we'll talk about that as we talk about the other things that are on our agenda today. That will weave into the discussion for sure. So want to go back a little bit to February of last year when things were really, really humming along. Unemployment was essentially flat at 2.4% roughly. Anybody that wanted to work was working. And the situation was really, really positive from an economic standpoint at a large degree. We had investments coming, we had new businesses starting at record numbers. We had employees being able to shift, move jobs. We saw wages moving up, and boom, here we go. We have a global pandemic. No one saw it coming, and it's absolutely been a game changer. So some organizations, some industries like hospitality, restaurant, retail have taken a very, very large blow from this pandemic, and it's slow to come back. Other organizations, some in manufacturing, distribution, saw their channels and their lines open up. And some of them were pivoting to make these enormous shifts in how they run and how they work their business to kind of ebb and flow with what the pandemic was bringing. So I think there are, as we emerge from this, there are a lot of differences in how we're going to work going forward. There are some positive things that we saw. Organizations that normally take forever to make changes and grow and shift took lightning speed initiatives in terms of retooling and restructuring internal processes. Look how fast we all pivoted to Zoom, right? I think we all knew this probably was coming at some point down the road. I know here at EA&E, we said, hey, we've got to get more involved in virtual learning. And, that was our plan, our big strategic goal, I think. Darlene knows this too, where we wanted to, research and investigate virtual learning. Well, guess what? In a matter of 30 days, we turned all of our training programs virtual, and we continued to refine that process. So that's an example of kind of the pivot that we're looking at here. So as we dig deeper into some of the things that we really want to talk about today is finding those quality candidates that you need to drive your organization forward, and then retaining them and integrating them into your culture. We'll kind of go in some steps here. And the first step is around job descriptions. So our job descriptions are that document that we email people, we give people, we create internally, and it's not an easy process, right, to create job descriptions. For our open positions, they normally have a job summary. What does the job essentially do in the organization? Then we have a duties list. Here are the things that you can expect on a day-to-day basis. For an accounting clerk, it might be, processing accounts payable, processing accounts receivable. For a customer service person, it might mean taking these X number of calls a day, responding to X number of customers, and then a list of what skills that we desire as employers to be able to come in to do this job effectively. So when we're creating job descriptions, we want to talk about kind of a 4-step process here. And the first step in that process is do a job analysis. And this is the most painful, guys, right? Because this is the one where you're saying to yourself, all right, I really need to do a job analysis and look at how this position integrates in the organization. And it really is determining what activities and responsibilities are associated with this job, how it's relevant and its important relevance to other jobs in the organization, and the qualifications necessary to perform the job, and the conditions under which the job can be done, right? So that last one comes into play as being very important now. Can this job, conditions to perform the job, can this job be done remotely? Some of you may be thinking about that within your organization. So we're really looking at activities and responsibilities when we're doing that analysis. We're looking at its importance and its relationship to other jobs. That makes a difference. The qualifications that you want in a candidate to get the job done, and the conditions. Now here, when you do your analysis, you're going to include a compensation study. And there are some free resources like salary.com and ONET online, which allow you to benchmark a job, a salary grade, or a salary range for a position. And those are free resources. Now, generally, when EA&E is working with our members doing these kinds of job analysis as it relates to compensation, we really look to benchmark 3 resources. So if you are trying to benchmark and say, I'm going to hire a financial manager or a controller for my organization, I want to go to 3 sources of information to look at for that salary guide. And again, here you can use salary.com. ONET is done by the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Very comprehensive. Their data might be a little bit behind market, so you may have to make those adjustments. Then maybe you can go to your industry association, your industry group. If you're in construction, if you're in healthcare, there are very, very niche associations that provide some salary information. Some charge, some don't. So what you can do is check out the industry and maybe try to tailor that 3rd resource for salary information around your specific industry. So once you've done the analysis and you've spoken to, folks inside who might be working with this position, and you've worked on your analysis, that's the first component of the job description. The next thing you want to do is create an appropriate job title. And you might want to get kind of creative with these, right? You're putting the job title out there as part of your job ad, your recruitment ad, and you are selling something. And I know it doesn't feel like that sometimes, and you just want to stamp it and be done and pop it on Indeed and run off, right? And then you want in your inbox a flood of amazingly qualified candidates. And that just doesn't happen. You all know this, right? It's a struggle. So consider, adding a little bit of fun or a little bit of, kind of a different influence into your job titles. Match the description of the role to the results of your job analysis, right? So you've done all this work, you've done your comp work, you've talked to other people in the organization who are going to be interacting with this person, and you're going to create a job description that is accurate and reflective of the expectations for the position. And then you're going to fine tune those, run it by a couple of people. Hey, does this make sense to you? If we put this out there and we get a candidate that can really fit a good part of this profile, do you think that'll get the job done here, right? This is the hard skills side of the equation. The interview will bring in the soft skills and the other part of the equation for you. Then we want to reel them in. So, and we're talking about a completely different process here. So your job description is an internal document that you create after a job analysis. And here's another important factor about job descriptions. They really should be reviewed every couple of years. So we run into people all the time that say, hey, I'm not getting anyone, for my customer service position. And our very first question is, where's your job description? When's the last time it was refreshed, right? So things change in your organization daily now, never mind annually. So we've got to take a moment and take a breath. And there's oftentimes no time to do this in your day. Small business owners, leaders in small businesses, we get it. But this is a really important step in the process to refresh your job descriptions. So you're going to use the job description as you're writing your recruitment ad, but you're going to put your marketing hat on. And you all are used to this. You wear multiple hats, you're running small businesses. It'd be great to stay in your lane as a business owner or a financial manager or an operations manager and say, that's not marketing, it's not my thing, right? Somebody's doing that. When you're writing a recruitment ad, you are the marketing person and you've got to sell the sizzle. Make it interesting, make it different and unique. Go on Indeed, go on LinkedIn, go different places and look at other ads hiring for that same position. You need to be better than the other ads that you're seeing if you're going to attract the right kind of candidate that you want. You need to give them what's in it for them, right? The with them phrase, what's in it for me? Well, what's in it for them is really important here. Why do they want to work for your organization? What's so great about going to work for you? Maybe it's benefits. Maybe it's flexible hours. Maybe it's what you do. Maybe it's so cool what you're doing that you can give them a little story in that recruitment ad and say, hey, these are the things we're doing here. This is why you want to come work for us. Go where your ideal candidates can be found. Once we've got that job analysis in your job description, take a moment and think about where these people are going and what they're doing. If it's, if you're looking for someone who's, for example, a recent college grad in accounting, where are recent college grads looking? Well, they're probably on Twitter and Instagram. They may be in some different LinkedIn groups from their college alma mater or one of the local colleges or universities. Think like your candidate and make sure you're going where they might go to try to find them and share your job description there or your recruitment ad there. As you put it out, as you put your ad out there, many times folks are having people go through their websites for the application process, the response from a recruitment ad. Sometimes it comes right to you through your Indeed account. Sometimes you're having them come to an email on LinkedIn. When you have that process of responding, you need to make sure that there's no friction there. You know, we've had occurrences where, you know, some companies that we've worked with will direct folks to their website because they say, hey, website's amazing, tells all about us. This is, you know, this is about the organization. There's pictures of our staff. It's warm, it's engaging, it's friendly. But then when they go through the process of hitting the website, there's 12 steps that they have to do to upload their resume. You want to take that experience yourself. Somebody in your organization needs to go through that process, try it out, remove the barriers. Because you know what we are? We are the Amazon consumer today. We want one stop, one click, 2 clicks, make it easy. And unfortunately, right now, it's a job seekers market. So you have to make it very simple for them to apply for your positions. And then follow those 3 R's, you know, review resumes on a timely basis, respond on a timely basis, and keep doing that for the duration. You know, we have, you know, we get a lot of complaints from candidates who don't feel like they are responded to from a lot of organizations where they're applying. You know, I will date myself here. This will tell you exactly how old I am now. I used to walk in and fill out a job application places, right? Or I'd answer an ad in the newspaper and I'd be able to call the organization. I'd be able to fax my resume, right? Here we go. Now y'all know how old I am and what generation I fall into. You know, we have to be responsive and we have to be respectful. Just like on the other side of things, we want candidates to be respectful of us as well when we set up interviews and things like that. And I know that somebody had reached out about the ghosting situation that's happening, where you're getting your candidates in, you're identifying who you want to interview, and you're setting up interviews, whether they're virtual or whether they're in person, and the candidate just doesn't show up. No call, no show. This is a term that we are very familiar with in the staffing industry. They're super familiar with temporary staffing candidates not showing up, not calling. It tends to be a more transient work experience. This is not something that we are getting used to as employers when we're hiring for full time. And it's happening for a variety of reasons. Number one, it's a candidate-driven market. Currently, there are more jobs available today than there are people who are ready, willing, and able to fill those positions. And that's for a number of reasons. We have folks that are staying home due to family obligations with COVID. Maybe there's a fear factor of going into a workplace. We're still going through vaccine process and availability and accessibility and things like that. It could be that they are receiving unemployment benefits, so they're not ready to go back to work. Whatever the case is, you're facing an uphill battle here, and you will potentially face that ghosting. The best way to combat that is to talk about that when you book these interviews and to say, hey, Darlene, we're expecting you Tuesday at noon. We're gonna, come virtually. We'll send you the Zoom link. I've lined up myself and a couple other folks in the organization. We've marked that, that 45 minutes to talk specifically with you. So if you can't make it, we really appreciate you letting us know. We get it. Things come up. Do that check-in, that reminder the day before. Hey, Darlene, just checking to make sure we're going to see you tomorrow on Zoom or here in our facility, our office space, wherever you might be meeting them. At noon, are we on? Please confirm. So, and I realize that that's not a one-stop solution all the time, but the onus will fall on you to try to make sure that that doesn't happen. Is it foolproof? Nope. I'm sorry, I can't give you that foolproof solution on that. The best way to combat that is to just put it out there to the candidates and give them permission to bow out ahead of time. It's okay if something comes up, we understand, people are busy, but we just would appreciate it if you'd let us know that, because we're making the time to talk to you. Sometimes that helps. So now we want to talk about where to post. And again, we want to go back and consider who we're looking for. who's our target? Who's our target market? That will have some bearing on where we post our open position. Indeed, you know, it tends to be quantity, not always quality. You get pages and pages of open positions under the same heading or category, but I think it's where everybody's going, so you got to be there, right? It's not entirely efficient, but that is where people go. You know, Career Builder, not so much anymore. Used to be big with Monster. ZipRecruiter, I think they promise a lot. They are spending a ton of money on advertising, radio, television, and talking to organizations that use them. Mixed reviews there. Facebook gets a lot of traction. If you've got a company Facebook page you want to share, if you've got some brand ambassador employees that already work for you, right? You as business owners can certainly share. You know, top staff in the organization can share on Facebook. Your brand ambassadors are those employees that you just want to wrap up and give a hug every day because they're so positive. They come in with a smile on their face. They are happy to be at work. Darlene is one of my brand ambassadors here at EA&E. She's always happy to be coming to work, always happy to help out our members. So if we have an opening, I will probably ask Darlene, hey, can you share this? Because I want her to share that in her network. She's going to put a little anecdote in there and say, hey, I love working here. You know, I like my job. This is what I do here. Maybe you know, want to consider this position. So Facebook is good. You know, you do have to watch. There's opportunity for backlash and things like that. So you do have to be careful. LinkedIn, you do want to be on LinkedIn. Your organization should have a company LinkedIn page that folks can follow. Invite your customers, invite your employees to follow. It's an important place to be. It is the business site. So LinkedIn is a great place to post your ads and try to generate some interest. You also can purchase LinkedIn recruiting packages if you're recruiting quite a bit. They are expensive. It's a budget decision that you have to make. You can research that, where you can actually get enhanced serviceability to go in and message folks, right, who fit your profile. The algorithms and the artificial intelligence that's available through LinkedIn is really uncanny, and Facebook too. It will cost you more money, but those are options that you should be familiar with and check into. And then there's Glassdoor, which seems to be causing you know, some of our members some angst because your employees can rate you on Glassdoor. Many times as you're responding to a job ad, a candidate today will say, well, I'm going to check and see what people are saying about them on Glassdoor. So number one, as an employer, you want to go on Glassdoor and look at your profile and see what's there and get control of that and start sharing some of your own information there. If you get a negative review on Glassdoor, you want to respond to it. You want to make sure you're ahead of it. You don't want to leave, oh, I worked there and there was crappy pay and they weren't very nice people. Or, you know, I didn't really have a great experience. You know, the managers were awful. You want to be able to respond to those things and have control of your own virtual destiny here that's out there. So make sure you're checking out Glassdoor and just watch out for those reviews. That's important to note. So when we talk about out of the box recruiting, and this is, you know, all bets are off, right? Your employees are your number one asset in the organization. You might have a lot of equipment. You might have a lot of technology. You might have the absolute secret sauce to whatever you're doing and producing. But your employees are going to make or break you in the long run. So this is important to us, right? We've got to put some really proactive effort into finding the best folks for our companies. And that means you have to be proactive. 70% of people that get hired are not necessarily putting their hat in the ring. So you've got to find those passive job seekers. Where do we go for that? Places like LinkedIn are great. You know, if folks have liked your page, they're interested in your page, maybe you're following you for some reason, you want to be sure to post your job ads there. If you do want to look for other professionals, you can do some searches on LinkedIn and reach out to folks. Make sure you're using your college career placement offices. We have such an amazing wealth of higher ed universities in this area. We've got certainly the colleges and universities that are, that are like the Elms and When You and all of those full-time, but we've also got STIC, HCC, and a lot of other great local resources. Connect with those career placement offices and make sure that they know you've got an opening, because they've got students, and they've got students who have graduated a couple years ago that may still be in their pipeline. MassHire offers some great resources for employers. Make sure you're working with your local MassHire team at FutureWorks, CareerPoint. They've got some fantastic employer resources. They can post your job there, and they've got candidates coming through their portals that are looking for work. This one is really important as you onboard new employees, whether they're junior experience level, or maybe they're just new to you. Think about when you're hiring them, where they could go. Think about the folks that you currently have employed. What's their career ladder? Is there somebody who's in a customer service position that you think has the skills to be a manager or a senior person? Get ready to groom those internal candidates and start doing that now. Building your own pipeline is one of the best solutions that you can do internally. It's not easy in small businesses, and I understand that. You don't have a pool of 100 employees that you can pick from, but really start to think about that strategic laser focus when you're hiring, and don't forget about those folks that are internal with you now. Boomerang employees are people who have come and gone, and maybe they left you because they had a better opportunity, where you didn't have any career growth for them. We're not talking about the people who you've kind of booted out of the organization for performance-based reasons. They couldn't meet the requirements of the position, and that were not good employees. We're talking about those employees that when they give notice and they leave, you say, darn it, wish I hadn't lost them, right? The good folks that you lose. That happens through natural attrition. There used to be a feeling that once you leave, we're shutting down, that's it. We're not welcoming you back, you're not welcome back. You made a choice, line in the sand, you're done. We're starting to look at more flexibility with that. Employers are bringing back, they call it the boomerang effect, right? They go out, they come back. Those candidates that maybe thought the grass was greener on the other side, or maybe they left you, got more experience, really loved your culture, liked you as a business owner, just wanted more experience, and you've got a new opportunity for them. That's the boomerang employee. So we want to keep our mind open to those kinds of things. Maybe your number 2 candidate might be your number 1 candidate. You hired candidate number 1. You need to hire the same position or a similar position, similar function. Go back to your resumes. Go back to your pool of candidates. Perhaps number 2 might have a little bit more experience or will be willing to revisit. That's why it's so important to close that loop on your applications and your resumes. Treat them well. You may need to go back to the well for those folks. We know this is true. Employee referral programs work because you're great employees, know other great employees, and they will make a good referral, especially if they're one of your brand ambassador employees, right? When I was looking to add to my team here at EANE, and Darlene reached out to me, we had a relationship. I've known Darlene for years. I know how good she is. I know what kind of a hard worker she is, and she has some great experience. So that was so easy for me to say, yep, I want to work with her. So expand your networks, and offer your internal employees a little bit of an incentive, because think about what you're spending with job ads, your time doing your job assessments and doing your job profiles, job descriptions. That time costs money. Think of what you're spending there when you could potentially bring in some good referrals through your internal employees currently. And make sure you're training up your next generation of leaders. That goes kind of to grooming your internal candidates, right? Think long-term, think strategic. I know that's difficult to do because you are all running small businesses and there's fires to put out all day long, but try to keep that long game in mind. And, as you're hiring, as you're grooming your internal candidates, who would be a good leader? And I'm going to give you a hint here. It's not always your phenomenal individual contributors. They don't always make the best managers. They've got to have certain characteristics and traits that will help them be a good leader. But be on the lookout and kind of be analyzing that on a regular basis. A lot of folks will say to me, okay, which one of these should I do? Which one? And I'm saying all of them, right? This is a full-on tack that you are using. So all these suggestions and ideas, we don't want you to employ one or two of them. We want you to kind of consider them. Every business is different, but give some consideration to employing a bunch of these as you're looking to hire. Really, really important. So you're short on time. You're saying, ouch, I need to phone a friend. I need some help. I don't have time to do this. You might be saying, I'm getting overwhelmed with Indeed applications. I can't go through these. So how do I do this? How do I get some support? You can use a staffing company. I'm a huge fan of staffing companies. I used to work for a couple locally for a lot of years. It's my background. I come from staffing and recruiting. And they really do offer some amazing support in the hiring process. They do a lot of the work for you. They're running ads, they're screening people, they're doing reference checks, they can do pre-employment screens. So if you need a background check, credit check, drug screen, anything, they can do all of that for you. And they truly can be a partner. So they can do it for temporary positions. If you need to fill in a short-term or even a long-term temporary, you don't want to add this position to your team forever and ever. Maybe it's seasonal. They're a great option for seasonal positions. Maybe you want to try someone out. You say to yourself, you know what, I've been burned twice. I've tried to hire for this position. I've turned it over twice. It's a full-time role in the company. What am I doing wrong here? What's happening? Well, the first thing I'm going to tell you to do is look internally, right? What happened? Is it us? Is there something going on with our onboarding process, our training process, our hiring process? But in conjunction with that, maybe consider the temp-to-hire route, where you engage with a staffing firm locally. And Darlene and I can both give you some great references. If you're looking for that reference, you can reach out to us. And it's a temp-to-hire. Typically, it's like a 3-month, 480-hour period of time where that candidate is on the payroll of the staffing company. You will do, they're going to screen them for you. You're going to send them your job description. They're going to want to talk to you about things like your company culture, your management style, your expectations for the position, what's going to make a great candidate for this position. They're going to run the ad. They're going to screen the people. They're going to do the reference checks. And they're going to say to you, I've got 3 qualified candidates. And then you can interview those folks. They are the responsibility at that point for that temp period of the staffing firm. You don't own them. They are not your employee yet. They are working at your facility. You're controlling what they're doing. They're working for you, whether remotely or on site, but they will be paid by the staffing firm, and the staffing company will charge you an hourly rate, right? So, and the hourly rates can be up there. Staffing companies have to pay all the same things that you have to pay for employees, right? They're paying all the state and federal taxes. They have to pay, many of them offer benefits to their temporary employees. So you're going to be paying the staffing firm an hourly rate that includes what you're paying the candidate, they're paying the candidate, and some uplift to cover their costs for that. At the end of that temp to hire period, and again, it's typically 480 hours, you can take that employee on with no additional fees. Or you can say during that process, you know what, this isn't working out. Joe's great, but he doesn't have the skills I need. They take care of removing Joe from your workplace, giving that feedback to Joe, and potentially giving you a different candidate that might be a better fit for you. So it's a good option. They also can do direct hire positions. If you say, I need to hire a position where not a lot of candidates are going to want to come on board on a temporary or temp to hire basis. We see this a lot with management related positions, accounting managers, operations managers, safety managers, customer service managers. You may not lure somebody from another company where they have a full-time position for a temp to hire position. So they might want to direct hire, which usually means you just pay the staffing company a flat fee for that hire. And many of them will give you a guarantee. If the candidate doesn't work out in the first 90 days, they will replace them at no charge or return a portion of your fee. So that's the scenario with using a staffing company. It can be a very, very helpful resource for your organization, especially if you're short on time. So we've got candidates now, and whether they're from our staffing company that we're using or from our own efforts, hooray, we've got some interviews, right? So how do we conduct a successful interview? And I'm going to make the argument that, your onboarding of a new candidate, a new employee to your organization starts at their very first interaction with your organization, which may be as a customer, right? Your customers may be part of the candidate pool that you're looking at for hiring. They've got some, familiarity with your company. They use your product. They like your product. So when you're thinking about the engagement process here and the interview, this may not be the candidate's first experience with you, but it needs to be the best, without a doubt, right? This is where we're going to make or break it. So make sure that the team you have, the individuals that you have interviewing these folks, really understand the job description, the requirements, and the connectivity between themselves and this person. That's going to be really, really important. And I would suggest not having more than 2 or 3 people interviewing at the same time. 2 is fine, I think. 1 is okay, and then move them to a second. Otherwise, when you get more than 3 people doing the interviews, I think it can be very intimidating for candidates. You might not get their best, best response from that, unless there are very few cases where they call it a stress interview, where you are trying to tax that person because they will have to be in front of a group of people on a regular basis, and you want to see how they do. In general, we recommend a couple of folks, or do a staggered process. First, you're going to meet this person or this team of 2. Next, you would meet this person or team of 2 or 3, and then this is the process. We want to make sure that we are making the candidate feel completely comfortable with the process. Transparent, informed. I really don't think you can over communicate in this case, honestly, guys. It's a case where you say, we want to say, Darlene, we welcome you. You're coming in, you're interviewing with, Allison, Samalid, you're interviewing with them first. Next process, once that interview happens for 30 minutes, you'll be meeting with John and Meredith. And then we'll be kind of narrowing our candidate pool, and your final interview might be with Pam, our CEO, right? Let them know what that is. So they're going to be like, okay, I've got 2 interviews here, and then if I make the cut, I'm going to go to the next interview. If it's remote, make sure they understand technology. Make sure they know the Zoom link. Make sure they know how to use Zoom. You might want to send them a quick cheat sheet. We make a lot of assumptions today that everybody can be remote. Everybody can be successful presenting on Zoom. We can't assume that. We want to make sure that our candidates are really, really comfortable. You can let them know, hey, we're a casual workplace. You can be dressed casually. Or, hey, we're a business professional. This is how we roll. So make sure that you're setting them up for success, that they feel comfortable. Clearly communicate expectations and process. This is really key. Ask behavioral-based interview questions. The questions that they can answer yes or no. For example, so I see that you've been a customer service specialist for the past 10 years. Yes. No. There's really nowhere to go from there, right? And we want more. We need more. We need them to talk 80% of the time. and we're going to talk 20% of the time. So instead of asking a question that can be yes or no, we're going to ask questions like, Darlene, tell me about a time when you had a very, very difficult conversation with a customer that they were really upset and how you resolved that. How did you make the customer happy in the end? Now Darlene's going into her memory bank and she's saying, oh my God, remember that guy 2 years ago? Oh, he screamed at me, up one side of me, down the other. It was awful, but I really did it. I calmed him down. She's going to relive that experience for you. She's going to talk about her process of how she got there. So set these up ahead of time. The other thing that's nice is when you get your questions lined up ahead of time and you have multiple people interviewing, you can have them ask the same or similar questions to kind of see the response that you're getting from your candidates. It offers you a lot of insight. So definitely look at those questions, make them really thought-provoking that require a detailed answer. And one of the things Darlene's going to upload is some examples, I think, of behavioral-based interview questions if she hasn't done that already. So we'll try to get, or you know what, if we don't have that, we'll make sure that we get that to you after the program today. We want to make sure we're listening intently, asking good follow-up questions, and then just repeat, right? So if you've got teams interviewing, make sure everybody's on the same page with the plan, what we're doing, and create that nice, warm, friendly, welcoming environment where we're going to get some information from the candidates. So yay, we've interviewed, right? We say, hey, we love this person. We all agree. When does that happen, right? Everybody says, Bob's the guy or Betty's the girl. So here we go. We've got our candidate with the job offer. So you want to conduct some reference checks. Reference checks are not easy right now. There are some very, very long processes. There are some processes that really don't yield a lot of information that some larger companies have employed. They actually outsource reference checking. If you want to get a reference on a former employee, you have to call an 800 number, and they're really only confirming dates of employment and things like that. So, what we're going to want to do in this case is make sure that all of the things that we've done up to this point, we've really done well, right? The pre-interview communication, the actual interview, maybe you've had folks do some sort of pre-employment check that relates to their position. I know when I was I was in staffing, we used to have folks read a ruler. We had a lot of employees going into a manufacturing environment where ruler reading was important, doing some basic math. Maybe you've had them do that as well. You can do background checks, credit checks, drug testing, fitness for duties tests, but those should come post-offer, right? You need to offer them the position contingent upon the results of these checks. Pre-employment assessments are very, very popular. Some of them can be expensive. You can use Myers-Briggs, Drake P3, Predictive Index. These offer some very good insight into the psyche of your candidates. And it's really kind of cool information because it provides you with the opportunity to load in the details about the job and then also match the results from the assessment, which typically for most of these doesn't take more than 10, 12 minutes for the candidate to do. It matches their profile with some of the successful characteristics that you want in the position. So if you have the opportunity to use one of these pre-employment assessments, it's a very nice tool to include in your process. It should not and cannot make or break your decision. Incorporate it in part of the process. So I want to talk about negligent hiring for a minute here. Unfortunately, we are in a climate where there's just a lot of microaggressions and outright workplace violence happening across our country right now. And we've seen the mass shootings. Some of them have been employment related, where disgruntled employees that are still working or formerly from that organization have gone back in and created some very devastating circumstances. And there is a negligent hiring rule and law that an employer is held liable for harm that its employees inflict on other employees when they knew or should have known about the potential risk for them to cause harm within their facility with other employees. So this is obviously post-evaluation, post-investigation. But for example, if you bring on an employee and you don't do a background check and they have a severe criminal history, you could be held liable for negligent hiring for bringing that person into your workplace if they cause some sort of issue or risk or harm to another employee. So I want to draw your attention to that as part of the employment process and part of the screening and onboarding process. So now we have our employee. We've gone through the process, and we need to integrate them into our organization successfully so they have a great experience. They tell their friends, they tell their family, they tell their network, and then they perform well in the job, right? We're looking for this whole successful package to line up and happen here. So you can create an onboarding checklist within your organization. And I know we've got one of those that Darlene's going to be sharing as well. All the things that happen or should happen in your organization. Some of them are the basics, paperwork, things like that you have to have at the state and federal level. Other things are things that will be more customized to you. And we've got an example that we can share with you. And again, we will get all of this stuff and make sure that you have access to it at the end of the program. Decide if you're onboarding remotely or in person. You know, we may have folks that are starting to work remotely that we may not see them. I know I've got somebody coming on board with our team here at EANE, and you know, her whole first week next week is going to be remote on Zoom, and then I'm going to be able to go meet with her hopefully the following week safely. So this is kind of a brave new world. We're navigating it one person at a time, one position at a time, making sure we are safe and putting the safety of ourselves and our employees first, right? In-person onboarding is, you know, when that happens, we're socially distanced in our companies right now. We're wearing masks, we're following protocols, and it's great to have employees engaging and interacting at your work site. So whatever works for you, we're just determining what that looks like and putting it on our checklist at the moment. Welcome your employees before they actually hit the door, right? So you can do a lot of different things. One of our member companies sends all of their new employees the week before they start an edible arrangement, right? They're a pretty large bank. It's a wonderful thing that they do. People really, really appreciate getting it. Certainly there's cost factor involved in that. You don't have to send them physically anything. You can send them a welcome card. We're really looking forward to seeing you. A welcome email. Have some staff members, you know, sign a card, or multiple people send out the email. Hey, we're looking forward to working with you. Can't wait for you to start next week. And then be ready for them, right? So when they start, technology, if they're using a computer, have that ready for them. If they're coming on site, have their workspace ready. If they're working from home, you can send them their kit, whatever they need. Send them company swag, send them materials, send them company pens, all that good stuff. Make sure that they're feeling welcome. And then you want to create a 30, 60, 90-day check-in with your new staff. Set it in the calendar. Some payroll systems will allow you to set this up automatically with their onboarding. But if not, set it on your calendar, whoever's responsible for this person, and check in 30, 60, 90 days. It's really, really important. And if you can assign a mentor or a buddy to that new person, that's really helpful too. So they're checking in as well. You know, allow them to tour the new person, or if they're working virtually, allow them for, you know, a 30-minute chat on a weekly basis. How you doing with things? Do you need help with anything? Let them make the connection to the other members of the team that they might need. So performance management, I want to put this in here because I think it's part of the onboarding process. And I just wanted to share this key information with all of you because it really has changed so much. The perspective has changed. So the annual one-time performance review that happens in December is gone. We have to kill it, right? It's not effective. You can still do an annual catch-up, but it really needs to be more of a dialogue continually on a one-on-one basis and a more frequent check-in. One of the things that happens if you only talk to your employees once a year about their performance is recency bias. What happened last? Maybe it's a great thing. Maybe Darlene landed, 6 new members in the course of a month, and she, had an amazing retention rate, and she went out and she did all this great stuff, but there was a problem in February or March, but I'm only reviewing her in December, and I can only remember the most recent thing that happened, and I haven't engaged her in this dialogue. Or the reverse can happen. Maybe something terrible just happened, something that really needs to be corrected, but all of these great things were happening in Q1 and Q2, but I'm only measuring her on Q3 and Q4. So this needs to be an ongoing coaching, one-on-one meetings, at least once a quarter. Feedback needs to happen. This does not have to be a big, formal, drawn-out thing. Make it simple, 15-minute check-ins, train your managers, really, really going to improve engagement, and it's going to help you get more performance out of your folks. Peer reviews, you can do those formal, use customer service surveys if you do those. Those are a great way to share feedback with your employees. If you're doing it all remotely, that presents a whole new set of challenges, right? But we want to make sure we're scheduling those meetings with those folks, touching base, and creating some engagement on a more frequent basis with our teams. So how do you lead the pack with employee engagement now that you've got this base of employees and you've brought on new folks? These are just some tips that I'm honestly sharing in a lot of the programs that we're doing here at EANE right now, because it's so, so, so important to include this in the conversation. You've got to embrace the backpack. Everyone, including us, right? This has been a year of crazy. There's been so much sadness, frustration. There's been an increase in mental health challenges. There's been an increase in drug use, alcohol use. There's just been an overall increase in things that have caused a lot of stress on everybody. Your employees are included in that. Their backpacks are heavy. Let them come to work. You know more about them today than you've known about them ever, right? We know we're taking temperatures sometimes for employees. We're asking them to certify how they feel today physically. So we know how people are feeling. We know more about their kids in school. They're having challenges with maybe elder care with folks. I know my mom's going to be 89 next week, and I've been watching her through this whole thing. We've all got a lot in our backpack, so recognize that. Let your employees come to work and show some empathy and some warmth and some increased communication. Again, those one-on-one meetings really, really help. Consider them stay interviews. We talk a lot about exit interviews in the staffing world and the recruiting world. Folks give their notice and we give them an exit interview, and then they get to dump on us all the things that they didn't like about their job. Well, I wish the company had done that. I wish the company had done this, and that's why I'm leaving. How about if we got that beforehand, before they left in a stay interview, and they might stay, right? We might be able to change some things. You can't change your entire process over the feedback of one person, but sometimes that conversation of, thanks for the feedback, I hear you, this is what we can do, this is what we can't do, but I appreciate your feedback. Sometimes that goes such a long way. So consider those. Coaching and listening. Improving your overall communication. Even if you're a small 5-person company and you're all working remotely, we've talked to a lot of our small business members that they're all remote. There's some challenges right now. You might think you're doing a great job of providing communication because you're wearing everything on your shoulders too, as the business owner, as the company leader. Make sure that your employees feel informed. One of our members has got 900 employees. Their CEO is doing a once-a-week video that he records and just gives a quick state of the state. This is how the organization's doing. This is what we're doing. This is, what happened this week. We're monitoring things. We look forward to bringing everybody back in September because everybody is remote. So there's a lot of opportunity to share important updates. Welcome feedback and questions. This is a really interesting point to make, that you want to give your employees a safe space where they don't feel that they might be retaliated against or spoken to differently or treated differently if they bring up suggestions or questions that might be somewhat controversial to what you may be doing. You want to allow them to challenge you and say, I'm wondering why we're doing this, or why did you decide to do this? So the best way to combat that is to put it out there first, but you can't put everything out there. So make sure your employees know, if you've got questions, come into us, talk to us. We want to hear you, and we will respond. And we will respond truthfully with as much transparency as we can. There are financial issues that you can't share. We know that there are things that can't be shared across the board, but the more time you can create for them to be able to feel like they can ask those questions, the better off you're going to be from an engagement standpoint. And finally, your managers, they're going to make or break you. And that might include yourself. You're wearing that manager hat, you're supervising people. This will make or break you in terms of employee engagement, productivity, and success. So make sure you are coaching those folks and you feel like they have the adequate training to engage these employees and get them committed to your organization. So wrapping up here, how do we win the talent war? And there's a few things, broad stroke, that we can say here. And that's, look at your house, right? Make sure that your organization is a place where people want to come to work. It doesn't have to be perfect. Nothing is. Things are fluid. They change all the time. It's very, very stressful, but we're here for a little bit. So we've got to live in it. But make sure that you're doing the best you can to create a great workplace for your employees. Benchmarking your comp and benefits. Nothing worse than when an employee comes to you and says, I'm leaving because I can go make this somewhere else. And you don't know what the answer is to that. Are they, is it right? Is it wrong? I wonder why this is happening. From a compensation and benchmark point, you need to know where you stand. It's okay to be the lowest payer or amongst that category in a group, because you've probably got other great things happening that you're going to share. You can be in the mid-range and say, you know what? We're not the lowest paying, we're not the highest paying, but here's what's great about us. Or you can take the strategy, and some companies do this, of saying, we're the highest payers because it's very stressful here. We demand the most from our employees, but you will make top dollar here. Whatever category you're in, you need to know it and you need to own it. And you need to make that part of your recruiting and retention process. And again, those free resources, salary.com, ONET, association, salary surveys, we've got some data here at EANE we can share with you too. Feel free to reach out to us. Get social and creative, tap into those internal resources. I have here, you need a battle plan. It is a talent war. It's going to stay that way for a while. So tap into everything. Use social media. Put yourself out there. Make sure your brand ambassadors are talking about you. We've had some members that have gone on the radio over the last 6 months and had a lot of success. So that's interesting. But make sure you're spreading things out, you're getting social, and you're using your resources for sure. Flexible work options. We've talked to some companies that have successfully blended positions into 2 part-time people working 1 full-time position because of childcare issues, right? Look at your positions. How flexible can you be with job sharing, flex time, folks working remotely? There's a gentleman that we work with at a partner organization of ours. He has 6 kids. And every time I talk to him, I'm like, Nathan, I do not know how you're doing this. And he said to me, my company is very flexible. I work from 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. Then I get the kids going with remote learning. Then I jump back on from 11 to 2. Then I'm on kid duty again. And then I'm working again from 7:30 to 9:30. Those are my hours. My employer lets me do it. I get my job done. Hats off to you. Wow, that's a full day. I hope he's getting enough sleep. But these are the kind of things that employers are doing. You got to be flexible. And then Make sure you've got a great broker that you work with that's really helping you negotiate your benefits, right? Your employee benefits are important. They're evolving and changing on an annual basis. Make sure as a small business, you've got some great partners, on the legal front, on the benefits front, that are not just phoning it in, that are bringing you options and bringing you creative choices. Those are some things that can really help you along the way with winning the talent war. So, and then of course you can reach out to us. Darlene and I are available if you have any questions. We do a lot of work helping organizations with their people process. So if we can be a resource, and again, we'll share those resources with you, some of those sample forms and policies, we want to be there to support you, and we're happy to do that.
Great. Thank you so much, Allison. You can go ahead and leave your information up there just for another minute, then unshare your screen. We're going to be moving into Q&A. And I do have 2 questions already here on the Q&A. One of our participants wants to know, how do you find out if someone has a medical marijuana license? When would you find that out? I think she meant really like the card, not a license, but the medical marijuana card. How would someone find that out? And is that appropriate to ask an individual, I guess?
We really are seeing employers do less and less overall drug screening in general because of the legalization of marijuana here in Massachusetts, overall, recreationally, and obviously medically first. It really depends on the essential functions of your job. And what we want to do is measure people based on their performance outcomes and not go down that path because of HIPAA, right? If they have a medical marijuana card for a medical condition, you don't have a right to ask that. Sometimes employees will disclose that information to us, and the cat's out of the bag at that point. But you really want to be measuring, and I'm not sure what the case is here, if there's been an issue, a performance issue, or people are concerned about that. But you really want to be measuring performance.
If you're actively recruiting either for yourself or if you are recruiting for other people, how would you find out if someone has
you don't you don't ask. You don't want to ask that question.
Okay.
No.
All right. However, if the job does require that the person, like a drug-free environment, you can tell them in advance that there's going to be a screening, done.
100%. So.
But you're not asking them, you're just informing them what the process is.
Right, because the reality is that somebody, for example, and I'll use the example of a customer service person, they have the opportunity to use marijuana recreationally or based on their medical card, for whatever reason, for a qualifying medical condition, and that doesn't mean they're going to be legally impaired when they come to work. So what you should have in your employee handbook is is that exact information. We are a drug-free workplace. These are our expectations. And, post-job offer, we will require a drug screen. And at that point, then someone will most likely disclose that they have a medical marijuana card, which you can ask to see at that point when they self-disclose. And it really should be related to the position. And I'll use the example of a forklift driver, right? This person's driving equipment, and if they have a medical marijuana card and they have to regularly use, or they are going to be regularly using, and they're driving a forklift, this is where we have to probe in more detail for more information. But generally for office-related positions, this does not come up. But you can certainly be a drug-free workplace. You can have a policy on that. You can have a policy on workplace violence. And you can let folks know that there are things in place at your organization. And if it relates to the position and they self-disclose, you can go down that path.
Right. Go ahead and unshare your screen. We have another question here on the chat. So can you verbally tell an applicant that they have not been chosen for the position, or does it have to be in writing?
No, you can verbally tell someone that. I think the important part of that is that you let them know, right? That's part of that closing the loop process, where you want to not leave people hanging. Everybody that's applied for the position, in the organization should get notified, but you can let them know. You should be prepared when you're talking to them personally that they're going to probably ask you more questions, and you need to be ready for those questions. Well, why not? Why did someone else get the job, and why weren't my qualifications enough? So be prepared for that. Be prepared to answer that with, we found someone with more experience doing X, or, we needed someone that had XYZ software, or this relevant certification, this relevant part of their background. You were our second candidate. We're going to keep your resume on file, and we'll reach out to you if something else comes up.
Great, great. I want to remind everyone, you can raise your hand and unmute yourself if you have a question at this point in time. Go ahead and raise your hand and I'll call you out, then you can unmute. In the meantime, I have another question for you, Allison. So what about when you get to the point where you're negotiating a salary with a candidate? What would be your advice for employers in terms of coming up with the salary range that they would offer, or the salary they would offer, first of all, and then negotiating that salary with the candidate?
Yeah, so one of the things that's important in that question is that we cannot ask people what they are currently making, right? That is a question that we cannot ask people as a part of Massachusetts state law currently. So this is really important in the framework of making sure that you have looked at your positions internally in your organization, and you've assigned benchmarks or salary grade levels. And you don't have to say this position pays $26,145 a year, right? You can say this position pays between $24,500 and $27,500 annually, or $12.50 and $14 an hour, whatever the situation might be. And you're going to get that information because you did your compensation analysis. You went to salary.com, you went to ONET, you went to your association salary survey, and and you've benchmarked yourself with your competition and, on a national scale and a regional scale, and you're comfortable with owning that space. So the conversation with a candidate is, typically, this position, and this is after you've talked to the candidate about the job. These are the expectations. This is your background. Great. We've had a conversation. You can say to the candidate, this position has been benchmarked at between, starting at $14 an hour. What would your expectations be for this position? And then they could say, well, my expectations are closer to $16 an hour. Okay, we can go to $15.50 with a review in 90 days or in 6 months, and that's how the negotiation starts. You can ask what their salary expectations are. You cannot ask what they currently make.
Right. And what happens though if your salary expectations are much higher than what you're offering?
Well, and I think that's where you fall back on your data, right? This is why it's so important to take a pause and go down that path and say to yourself, I am going to make sure that I have solid information. And that's what you say to the candidate, we've really done our due diligence here. We benchmarked ourselves with our competition. We've looked at the salaries for these positions regionally and nationally, and we feel like we're right in line. We are right in the middle. We don't pay the lowest and we don't pay the highest. We're right in the mid-range, but here's where we're different. We've got a great benefits plan where we pay X amount of your medical, or we offer these enhanced benefits. So I think you having that data and being armed with that information, you can counter that. And just because someone has made more, it's a different situation. Folks may have come from a higher level in their current or immediate past employer, and they're starting at a little bit of a different level. So those are those difficult conversations that sometimes are tricky to have, but you're going to feel a heck of a lot better about those if you've done your homework.
Great. Let's see, we have a question here. How does it work to focus on a target group for employees, such as if you wanted to recruit veterans, for example?
Sure. I think in general, I think we try to stay away from recruiting single populations. But I understand that veterans are a different situation. Number one, we have local veterans representatives through a lot of the career centers. So I would suggest reaching out to them if that's the pool of candidates that you want to consider. I'm not sure why specifically you would want to single them out, but maybe point that out in your job ad to say veterans encouraged to apply. Oftentimes what we see with our veterans is they may not have the specific skills that you're looking for, but they've got a lot of amazing transferable skills from their service, right? So they've done management, they've done supervisory, they've done purchasing, and those are really transferable skills. So I would encourage you to, connect with your local veterans group to reach those folks directly because they're in touch with that population, and then incorporate them into your job ad and maybe call them out just to say, we encourage, veteran applicants or something like that in your job ad.
Right. And we have a question in Q&A here. Do you have a list of benefit brokers that you would have worked with that you would provide or recommend?
Absolutely. I would be happy to send that list over to Somalid and she can share that with you.
Yes, there was a few attachments that I know Darlene was trying to share in the chat. Unfortunately, we are in the Zoom webinar version, which is not allowed to share
right.
attachments on the chat directly. But for those of you who register for today's webinars, I have your email, so I'll be sharing that information with you via email after the webinar.
Great.
Let's see. So, one other person had asked me before, and I think you touched this on your webinar, you touched on this. How do you get people to apply? How do you get people to apply? I know you talked about making the job description fun and all of that, but any further advice, anything you want to like reiterate from your tips on that?
Sure. So I think there's no magic button, unfortunately. And it really encompasses a lot of the things that we talked about today. And again, you can't really single out one or two things. You've got to incorporate a lot of those strategies. But the other thing that's really helpful is general awareness of your business. So, how well known are you in the community? How connected are you? How much are you sharing your subject matter expert knowledge out on Facebook, out on LinkedIn, in business groups? With local chambers of commerce, and how well known is your company name? Because that's going to cash in some benefit for you, right? If you can push yourself out there publicly and have that recognition, I think it's about capturing the biggest part of the market space that you can by having a public presence, making sure your job ad is out there prominently. It is interesting, with an interesting subject headline, interesting job description title, and sharing it as many places as you can, including asking your employees to share it, right? It's kind of that 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon thing, right? Where everyone's connected to Kevin Bacon. You want everyone connected to you. Spread it out, share it. Family and friends, when you're a business owner or a leader in a small business, ask them to share it. Your best source of new candidates is going to come from your current employees or your friends, your family, your business connections through those referrals. That's where you really want to tap into. So let everybody know. Let your accountant know that you're hiring. Let your lawyer know you're hiring. Let your broker know you're hiring. Send them your ad, right? Ask them to share it. Use your business network. That's how you're going to be able to attract the best candidates.
Right. And would you happen to have a sample interview questions you can share, or where would you recommend people go for that?
Yeah, we're going to share that. I'll send that to you because we've got some categorized behavioral sample interview questions. That's going to be a 2-page great reference for everybody. We will send that. Yeah.
Great.
Yep.
Excellent. Thank you so much. So at this time, I do not see any further questions in the chat. We do have, I did want to share with everyone. Let's see here. I'm going to want to share with everyone contact information for folks here in the Valley who work with small businesses like yourselves. You can reach out for these folks for assistance. Some of these organizations primarily work in lending, like Common Capital. They are local community development financing institutions. So they're a nonprofit lender here in the Valley. Valley Community Development has they do mostly housing and they do programming lending, but they do have some help with oh, I have to update that contact information. I have Dice there still. She's moved on to another organization. I have to update that. But anyway, they're located in Northampton. SCORE in Massachusetts Small Business Development Center are resource partners of the SBA, as well as the Center for Women Enterprise. And Franklin County Community Development has the Western Food Processing Center, and they also provide loans, mostly USDA loans for rural areas. But those are all folks that you can contact for assistance with your small business. We're not HR experts. That's why we're leaning on the experts like Allison and Darlene from the Employers Association of the Northeast. And I mean, and there are other folks in the community as well that can help you with that. But we can help you with your general business needs. For if you're looking for an MSBTC office nearest to you, we have offices all throughout the state. The best way to find one is to go to our website, msbdc.org. And if you're needing requests for counseling for a one-on-one free and confidential business advisory appointment, you want to go on our website and fill out request for counseling form for that. I want to thank Allison again for being with us here today, and she'll be back with us next week. Well, we'll have part two of this the HR part of this webinar series, Fundamentals of Running a Successful Business. That'll be next Tuesday at 12:30, and we will talk about employee laws that all business owners must know, including overview of employer obligations and employment law highlights. I'm sure that's very, very important, especially during this period of time. Please be sure to check out all the other webinars coming up and register with events, with enough time. Thank you again, Allison. Thank you, Darlene. Thank you all for attending today. This webinar is recorded and will be posted in a YouTube channel next week. And I look forward to seeing you live here again next Tuesday at 12:30. Bye, everybody.
Thanks. Bye, everyone.
Bye.